The content of this episode may not be suitable for some audiences. Listener's discretion is advised. Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia and the founder of Traffick Jam Heroes bring awareness to the realities of human trafficking. We hope today's sobering conversation will bring greater awareness to advance light and hope.
A few months ago, I came across an Instagram post called the Traffick Jam Heroes. And I heard a most compelling story. And Zach, the founder of Traffick Jam Heroes, is with us today. Zach, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Hello. I can't tell you how impacted I was by your post because it's an uncomfortable subject. And it's not going away. By ignoring it, it's not going to go away. The things I've heard around trafficking and human trafficking and boyfriends trafficking their girlfriends and just the confusion, chaos, and dis-ease that this has brought about in our time, in our generation, is absolutely crippling. So I wanted our listening audience to hear your story.
Yeah, of course. Well, I appreciate you giving me the platform to be able to tell it, because I don't feel like I mainly share how I got started with it or why I have a passion. I just continue to post and I'm continuing to spread awareness. I feel like my efforts kind of show where my heart's at. But originally so I've done content creation for the past 6 years. I've started over 30 accounts, trying to just get on the For You page or whatever it is, just trying to go viral. I've worked at a gym doing content for them. I've, I've made a CIA account where I was exposing alien documents. You could find it somewhere. And I did a page with my art, just all things I was super passionate about and just cared about. And then I was working at my brother's clothing company in the warehouse one day, and my friend sends me this podcast, and it's about child trafficking. And it was with Jordan Peterson and the head of the R.E.S.T Underground Railroad. And I was able to listen to it since I could work and listen at the same time. So it was a 2-hour podcast. And I just totally got exposed to the realities of human trafficking. I knew it existed at the time, of course, everyone does, but I don't think I realized to the extent it actually existed. I had no idea that there was over 50 million people that are being trafficked right now. I didn't realize where it actually happens or how much these kids go through, and it was actually absolutely devastating. So my heart was just breaking, and in those 2 hours, I was just in a completely different world than that warehouse, and my eyes just got totally opened up. And so after that, I was just absolutely shook. I just couldn't believe it. And so over the next 5 or 6 days, I just did a bunch of research on child trafficking, all types of human trafficking, reading story statistics, the facts and stuff like that. And
tell us a little bit about what you discovered before we move on.
Yeah, it just what exactly trafficking is, because most people think there's a big misconception out there that it's some guy that's picking up kids in a van, giving out free candy or something like that. But that's actually not true. Although that does happen, it's very rarely the case. And most of it happens with family members or significant others. And people like to focus on the Hollywood, the Jeffrey Epstein stuff and the Diddy case and stuff like that, which is all fair and
it's real, right? It's real.
100% real, but that's not where most of the majority of trafficking was. And that's what I realized, it's happening in my neighborhood. It's happening down the street from me. We have no idea, and
why are people trafficking?
I mean,
Well, first of all, define it. Define it for me.
Yeah, so it's a pretty broad term. There's like obviously the forcing of working, but there's also like a lot of coercion and manipulation that happens within it. And that could be considered trafficking if the person doesn't know exactly why they're doing this, or like they believe that they're doing it for some other good. Often like a boyfriend will be trafficking their girlfriend, making them do various acts out of like, oh, if you do this, like you love me, or like this is like how you get a place to stay or something like that.
Would it be accurate to say that human trafficking is modern day slavery?
Yes, 100%. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it just looks a lot different than it did back when the transatlantic slave trade was like there's no auction blocks in the middle of the town square.
Public square, yeah.
Yeah. Now it's not the new auction block is done on social media. It's all over, and it's on Snapchat, Instagram, like TikTok, through DMs, like ads on certain websites and stuff like that. It's so private, and we say 50 million people, but we have no idea. We literally have no idea how many people. It could be 100 million. It could be way more than we could ever imagine.
I think so too. I think it's much, much higher given what I see behind closed doors and the things I hear.
Yeah, 100%. And often, like, I think about the number 50 million, like, pretty much every single day, because I'm just creating this content and stuff like that. But it's really hard to conceptualize numbers when they get into the millions, especially when it's dealing with people. But when you boil that down to compared to the amount of people that are on Earth, it's 1 out of every 150 people are being trafficked, which is like it's way better of a comparison to think of. And it just like realizes like how bad this really is.
When you think of the kids that have disappeared at the border alone, and it's been exposed that it is an absolute human trafficking. I mean, it's like a fire hydrant, right? It's an outpouring of people that are being trafficked. We know that 300,000 plus kids have completely disappeared.
Yeah.
It puts into context how small the 50 million calculation in fact is. I agree with you. I think it's it's a far larger number we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So do the first responders and people that we work with. We think the number's far greater.
100%.
I heard a specific narrative here that either you were reading or you were getting the story out and you were doing a monologue. Can you tell me a little bit about this story? So
that story was actually submitted anonymously by one of my followers. So I did this thing where I created like a Google forum, and victims that are of like trafficking or sexual assault or anything related to the content that I post, they're able to submit their stories. And so I went to one of my buddies as a filmmaker, and we got to shoot it in like a high production area. And so that's all I really know about it.
What gripped you about that particular story? Because it's so compelling, and I don't think it's as rare as we'd like to think it is.
Yeah, 100%.
So what's been the response from your viewing audience?
It's been all over the place. I definitely get like a lot of DMs saying like, hey, this is so validating for me. I've had so many similar experiences to the ones that you're sharing on social media. Thank you so much for like doing this. And then there's people like I do a lot of anti-porn content, and it's like because porn and sex trafficking are directly related. And people are like, hey, like you helped me quit porn. Like, thank you so much. Like after watching one of your videos, I never watched it again because I was just like so scared off by it, which I think is great. And then there's like obviously the trolls in it, and then people like giving like random death threats and stuff like that, like what you'd expect over like a controversial, or I guess, yeah, like a pretty like heavy content like mine. Like nobody's really willing to speak up. So when someone does, there's like a lot of like emotion that gets tied up in it, which I understand. So yeah, they're all over the place. Yeah.
So hopefully the segment that Jonathan was just able to play for us, that's just like a story that you got and you decided to do a monologue as if role playing that it's your story.
Yeah, exactly.
What was the response to that?
I don't remember in that story in particular, but I know just like sharing people's personal stories, it just really hits home, because like you're giving a voice to someone that usually doesn't have a voice. And especially like with people not wanting to hear this. So
is there one that stands out in your mind that was especially gripping?
Yes, there's one about one of the survivors of the Jeffrey Epstein case, and you could just see time after time of their voice being unheard, and them just like going through a bunch of different things and not being able to speak up, and like the law not being on their side. And that it was really impactful, because there's not only the trauma that they have to carry, but they still see like a guy like Jeffrey Epstein, who was free for way too long. He was doing his whole disgusting operation for like probably more than 20 years. And justice was luckily served, but also like not really, because
no, justice has absolutely not been served in that case. Because everybody wants to know, they want to get to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's not it.
Yeah, exactly. So
there's a lot more garbage beyond what he did that is darker and more sinister. And sadly, it's political, it's governmental. And I think it crosses every sphere of influence, from family to church to state. And it's not acceptable. And it crosses national boundaries. And it's not going to go away until we get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. And all the knowledge that he had, and it's just like gone now. It's just gone forever. And we have no idea like who is really associated with it. And like some stuff has come out in the recent years, but I mean, that was just like that would have been such a win if like we were able to get some stuff out of him. And it's really unfortunate.
Well, that was never going to happen. So I don't think we should be discouraged. I don't think that was ever going to happen, because they were going to take him out. There were too many people collaborating with him, and that was just never going to happen. And he'd never come clean anyway. There's just too much. It's a lifestyle for them, and there's just too much. It gets too complicated. But what is beautiful is that there are survivors that are strong, that are courageous, that are willing to send their stories. And I don't know how we can do this, Jonathan, but I want to invite our listening audience to send in your story. If you are in a state of utter confusion, chaos, and dis-ease, and your conscience has been violated, if you're a victim of anything that you think may even be trafficking, we want to invite you to send a message, post a message. Jonathan gets everything. You can email info@theplaceofrest and tell us your story so that we can give light to it. Because Zach, as you were reading that monologue that I'm hoping Jonathan was able to post, the thing that was gripping to me is, wow, this is the voice of a generation. The strength, the courage, the conviction of that boy or the girl that sent in that story for you to read. It inspired me to say, no way, we have got to become part of this conversation. I've had the founder of Exodus Cry organization on the podcast, and it's just gripping what they're doing with legislation. But when the corruption is systemic, you see how challenging that can be, because we're only getting partial stories. The only people we're going to get the whole story from is from the victims. And they know where all the bodies are buried. They know. So we just have to give a platform to this conversation so enough victims in every walk of life, no matter who their mother, their fathers, their cousins, no matter who they work for, they need to have a place, even if it's anonymous, to vent the horrific trauma that comes with being trafficked. And you inspired me to do just that. And that's why I wanted to have you discuss this topic. I'd like you to tell us about the connection between pornography, because a lot of people just think it's harmless, and human trafficking.
Yeah, there's actually multiple connections. The one that we could directly see is like these porn sites, like literally having people that are sex trafficked on them. Pornhub was sued back in 2017 because of the channel Girls Do Porn. It was found that they were just a huge sex trafficking operation. I'm actually working on covering that story right now. And back in 2020, they had to remove 80% of their site because it was just infested with like child sexual abuse material and all just like disgusting things. And so it's just like over and over again, they try to like act like they're the ones that are providing enjoyment, but it's like this isn't enjoyment at all. It's actually an addiction, and it's like
it's violence. People. It's a violence.
It's like one of the roots of it could be the root of like sexual violence as well, and just like the way that it makes people objectify each other. And I'm not just saying men, although men are like they're the ones that watch the most. It's like 87 to 90% of men and 40% of women. And so it just does nothing good. It's literally only harms for society. And yeah, I mean, we can't really like the research between like pedophilia and pornography is kind of iffy, but me personally, I do believe that pornography could lead to that because it just causes more degeneracy as you watch it with the desensitization. And
perversion has no limits. It only looks for a victim.
Yeah, legit, 100%.
And I think what's interesting too is people do not associate pornography with a violence, but a violent act is an offense to your very constitution. It is not a victimless crime, even if you're the only one consuming pornography. Because at the end of the day, it's a violation of conscience. That's why you do it in secret. That's why you keep it hidden. Because the law of God is written in the heart of man. The conscience bears witness. The things that are an assault to us are a violation of conscience. And that assault is violent. Because the degenerative state of the conscience of a person is destructive in ways that people don't understand. It's a silent killer.
Yeah.
The violation of conscience and the assault you commit against yourself, we often hear it referred to as sinful behavior, because it's an assault you're committing against your own conscience. And it is destructive, first and foremost, to you. And that destruction doesn't stop with you. It opens the portals to what I call spiritual parasites, or entities, foreign entities outside of life-giving forces that are destructive to you. So you open portals into realms that you don't even understand. And I think when I listened to that piece that you read, it was chilling. And I thought it's impossible to listen to that segment without recognizing I cannot be silent. Something destructive is upon us as a generation. And the violence that we commit when we open those portals to pornography or violation of conscience in any way is into things we don't understand. They're destructive.
Yeah.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 22.
What made you feel this measure of conviction and repulsion against this and pornography beyond the Jordan Peterson interview?
Yeah, I think like my heart breaks every single time I read a story. Going over and over this stuff. It's not like I'm desensitized or anything like that. I literally like I sit and
you can't get used to it, can you?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
Never, legit. Yeah. But just every time I read a story, the more I find out about it and the more I talk about it to people, just like friends and people in my community that ask what I do. And I'm like, oh, I do this. and they have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? But it's just like, it's become my world now that I know that it exists to this extent so much. And when it's like actually exposed to people I know and it's just brought up in a normal conversation, people
as
are
if it's nothing, as if it's nothing.
As if it's nothing. Yeah. But it's like one of the biggest issues in the world right now. Mm-hmm. And having the conversation just end after I say something devastating.
I was going to say, how do people respond when you say, did you just hear what you said?
Yeah.
How do they respond?
It's two extremes, actually. It's either they really want to talk about it and I have like an hour-long conversation, which rarely happens, or they just don't want to talk about it at all. Right. And they like try to switch the topic, or they give me an uncomfortable look. I could tell by their body language that they don't really want to talk about it. And so I'm like, oh, I have to move on. You know, it sucks, but
they're enslaved. They're enslaved by the violence that's like perpetrated, even them. That's why they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's like this. It's this like ignorance is bliss mindset. I think I don't agree with that at all. I think it's very like ignorant and stupid. But
you don't run from things that don't violate your conscience and that don't make you uncomfortable. So when you look at what you're exposing or what you're bringing attention to in the context of a violence they're committing against themselves, it's not something they're proud of. But not only are you committing this violence against yourself when you think about it, but you are leveraging the depravity of the producers, of the exploiters, of the people that are pimping these people out. So you're part of the problem, not you, but a person participating in that, consuming that is part of the problem, and they know it, but they're enslaved too. They're often enslaved by the addiction.
Yeah.
I applaud you. 22 years old. I look into your beautiful young face and I think, wow, one of my favorite quotes years and years and years ago, this came out of my mouth, and I've said it for many, 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 many years, that the enduring voice of a generation will speak to the triumph of the human spirit. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing. Your voice will speak to the endurance of conviction, the endurance of those who say, no, I'll forfeit financial gain. I'll forfeit personal loss. I'll forfeit my time. I'll forfeit friends. I'll forfeit relationships, but I'm not going to sit this one out. And this is the world we're inheriting. I don't think so. I'm going to do something about it. I'd rather live in it as part of the resistance. And I just want to applaud you and commend you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
When this article that you're working on comes out, we'd like to hear all about it and have you back on to discuss it.
Oh, the one I was talking about with yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm going to upload that probably next week. So I'm doing like a 5-part series since so this girl, she goes on a podcast telling her story about her personal experience getting sex trafficked by girls through porn. And it's about a 2-hour podcast. Like, it was hard to even watch. It was hard to make it all the way through. Just getting so many emotions coming up, just so much anger, frustration, and just seeing how evil people are. You know, it's hard to hear. So, but I took notes on it. It took a few days, and I was able to just like dissect certain things and come up with like a 12-minute summary of it. So hopefully it'll lead people to support the organization that did the podcast, and obviously the survivors with it. But it came from the podcast, Fight the New Drug. They're like anti-porn. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
no, Fight the New Drug.
Yeah.
Okay, Jonathan, we got to put that on for people to be able to reference. What's your Instagram link?
Yeah, the Traffick Jam Heroes on Instagram, and just Traffick Jam Heroes on TikTok.
Love it. Traffick Jam Heroes. And the other one was, one more time?
Fight the New Drug. Yeah.
Fight the New Drug.
Yeah.
The voice of a generation will speak to the triumph of the human spirit. You're impacting thousands and thousands and thousands of people. You don't need overhead. You don't need a big studio. You don't need a big staff. You need to do what you're doing with conviction and sell out to absolutely no one.
Yeah.
You need 100%. To persevere and don't let anybody own you. Keep fighting the fight.
Will do. Yeah.
Okay, stay in touch with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. God bless you, Zach. Thank you for your work.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right. Thanks for having me on.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to R.E.S.T with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.